Got it right for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a global inclusion and cross-cultural unity, a TEDx speaker, corporate trainer, filmmaker, and educator, shaping change across everyday border. No other than Mr. Jad-Évangelo Nasser. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Jared. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
You. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, so my name is Jad-Évangelo Nasser, and I'm a global inclusion and cross-cultural specialist, TEDx speaker, filmmaker, educator, and professor. I was born and raised in Lebanon with a Palestinian father, Lebanese mother, and later in life, discovering that we have Haitian heritage in our family. And funny story, after working and living in Lebanon, then working for Dubai and Saudi Arabia, I moved to New York and got adopted by a Puerto Rican mother. And I can share about that a little bit later on. But I produced my film Once Upon a Color in New York that is now on Prime Video that talks about global culture. And having worked around the world, mostly in multicultural marketing and in advertising, then going into DEI and language localization and education, I found myself in the expertise of being a global inclusion specialist, which means I consult with organizations and institutions on how to have cross cultural strategies in their organizational development, their hiring practices, their DEI strategies. I design curriculums and lesson plans with the universities where I teach on cross cultural communication. And I travel the world and learn about different cultures and how cultures think, whether here in the US, in immigrant communities, or with people who come from different backgrounds, or whenever I travel. And I share those stories on multiple platforms, hence my TED Talk on cultural curiosity. Having speaking five languages and having this global mindset, it's a way of thinking, it's a way of life, it's a mindset, it's a lifestyle, and it's a passion of mine. So every day is a day of global inclusion for me. People think that I work every single moment. I don't. I just exist. So for me, it's a way of existing. It's not really a job or a career. It's just existing in the world as a globalist.
Existing indeed, Mr. Jad-Évangelo Nasser. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And let's talk about a global citizenship, how travel shapes cultural identity and build cross-border empathy. How do you define a global citizen in today's world, and how does this differ from simply being a frequent traveler or having
Hmm.
a passport?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question because I talk about that in my TED talk. And there is a difference between, being a globalist or a global citizen and then being a global traveler or a global tourist. I actually put them in three categories, and people can be all three or one or each. Some people just travel for tourism. They go to 100 countries around the world, go to all the touristic places, come back, yet still speak one language, don't engage in dismantling, white supremacy or anti-blackness, or learn about cultures and understand colonial history. That's simply a tourist, someone who tours the world to just be exposed, have fun, leisure, and come back. Then you have a global traveler, someone who enjoys the experience of traveling, who likes to go to different communities, who likes to be around the world, who likes to pay as a hobby to go on an airplane or on a boat and travel and experience things from food and everything. It's the experience of traveling itself that they enjoy, right? That is a global traveler. Now, a global traveler does not necessarily feel the need to learn another language or learn how to cook new food or decenter themselves from the experience and allow the foreigners that they meet to take center stage in their stories. Global travelers still like to be the center of the story, and that's a great thing. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Like there's a lot of global travelers, but still no intention in diving maybe deep sometimes. A global citizen, in my honest perspective, or a globalist, is a mindset. You don't need to travel to become a global citizen. It's about how do I immerse myself with the multiple communities around me while understanding my positionality and their positionality. How do I understand me, for example, as a fair skinned person or as a ethnically mixed person myself? When I travel the world, how I am treated and mistreated in different countries, as opposed to, for example, a dark skinned person who travels to these countries and how they're treated. That's a global citizen, understanding the inequities of how people exist in different environments. When we go to other countries, we try to not be the center of the story, but allow the foreigners, not the foreigners, or allow the locals actually to be the center of the story and learn from them and understand how they operate and adapt to their mindset and then invite them into our world, right? And have an exchange and then create a sense of like, powerful connections with each other. You can do that by living in Atlanta and New York and Chicago and South Carolina, in France, in Luxembourg, in Lebanon, in Syria, around you by just literally exploring the different ethnicities around you, different races, and different countries of origin, immigrants who live there. Or you can do it while traveling as well. It doesn't require money, it doesn't require a passport, it simply requires you to have an open mind and learn about new things and start changing things about you, changing your language, your way of behavior, or adding a new language, or learning about a different colonial history, right? Or learning about different inequities that are happening around you and engaging with those conversations with other people. So that's what makes a global citizen.
Mr. Judd, how does immersive travel foster a deeper sense of global citizenship compared to a short term tourism?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it's about the intention. If you're traveling somewhere, whether it's 2 days or 1 week, what is your intention while there, right? Some people travel for 1 week, stay at a resort in Dominican Republic, for example, and don't leave that resort. They have everything they want. Is that really immersive? While other people, such as myself, go to 3 days to that same country, for example. But while in that country, literally diving deep, staying at an Airbnb somewhere more local, talking to people, attempting to speak the same language, observing behaviors, observing how humor is connective between me and the locals, for example, learning about the immigrant communities in that country. For example, when I was in the Dominican Republic, I was very intentional about going to Haitian restaurants. I was very intentional about meeting other Haitian individuals who were there and asking them about their experience living in DR, given the conflict and history between Dominican Republic and Haiti, right? And the mistreatment of Haitians in Dominican Republic. And that was part of my journey in just like 3 days. And I've learned so much. And that made me appreciate the country and the people in the country even more, as opposed to someone who maybe goes for 1 week and stays at a hotel all the time, right? So that's what makes a very, very immersive experience is the intention and the action after it.
Very well said, Mr. Judd. Very well said and beautifully articulated. How does meaningful travel force us to confront our unconscious cultural biases or ethnocentrism? Can you give an example?
Yes, absolutely. Your world will be open and you will start realizing more about your privilege, actually. I think that has a lot to do, maybe this question with how do you realize our own privilege? Like when we travel around the world, you realize, like, wow, like I have the ability to come and travel here, but some people here are not as privileged as I am. And makes me realize, like, wow, like I um, have more advantages in this world than some people. It makes me realize I have to decenter myself and understand that people have different lived experiences, right? So it's more of a self reflection on ourselves and realizing that this is not just about learning about other people. This is also about learning about ourselves and our advantages and realizing that we have to be aware of these things. And sometimes we don't do that self reflection because when we are aware of our advantages and our privileges, we'll be aware of our biases. And then we start changing certain things. And then, for example, when I come back to the United States, my language changes. Certain words I start using, for example, or certain behaviors I stopped doing because traveling allowed me to do that. So, how do we treat the people within our own communities better after we go travel? That's very necessary, right? especially when it comes to like concrete examples such as like anti-blackness and colorism, for example, a big thing. I always discuss colorism and anti-blackness in today's world because it's such a worldwide phenomenon, and to all the countries I've traveled, I've witnessed different levels of anti-blackness and colorism, right? So when I come back to the US, I have a much more strategic approach in my social navigation while understanding these things, right? And I address them in my community, knowing that people in my community, sometimes my community, I mean like everybody, not just people who are from my background. Like I have a very diverse community, but how do we address anti-blackness and colorism, from a foreign perspective, and help people understand and have new thinking regarding that?
Mr. Judd, where do you draw the line? How can travelers deeply engage with and learn from other cultures respectfully without appropriation?
Yes, that's a really good question. By decentering yourself and realizing that you don't have to be the one who's needs to be satisfied in that moment, right? Like when we tend
Yes.
to travel, and I discussed this in my TED talk, especially when I go when I went to Trinidad and I shared my experience with my taxi driver Baron, and this particular clip received like almost 1 million views on my Instagram reel. When we talk about how Baron was the star of my trip, like I was sitting there just listening to his stories and enjoying the way he talks and addresses everything, and I felt like and I celebrated him in that moment. Not that he needed it, and I realized to myself, like he told me, like you're as Trinidadian as I am, right? And I'm like, that is so. I mean, I'm not Trinidadian, but to hear from a local
Yes.
saying that like I am Trinidadian is something that means a lot. But then realizing like, but it's all about you. This is not about me. You're giving me a compliment, but you are like I was telling him like, no, you are like my Lebanese uncle. Like this is what you are, So we kind of like celebrated each other, but it was more of like me as a traveler, as a foreigner in this land. I was uplifting the local or the native of this land and applauding him and just listening to him and putting him on a pedestal because it's not, I want him to have a good time. Not that he needs to, and even though I'm paying him to take me around, but it was this intentional pleasure of like I would like to see the joy of the local. Whatever the local makes them happy, I would like to see that, right? And that'll make me happy. And I don't want to come off as a way of like saviorism or anything like that. I'm not trying to save anybody, but I want to see the joy in other people. And I think that's very important when it comes to going against appropriation, is when we want to see the joy in other people, when we want to see other people being celebrated rather than us being celebrated, right? Because sometimes during travel, the locals welcome us and they make us wear their traditional attires. You see it in Ghana and Accra, for example, or in Nigeria, or even sometimes in Turkey. Like they give you their attire and their clothes and wear them, and they want to take pictures of you, and you feel so empowered that you're wearing the traditional clothing of the locals. Is that appropriation? Not really necessarily in that moment, but for me, I'm like, thank you for letting me wear this, but I w- I'm here for you. Like I want to know more about you. I want to learn about you and everything. Like, don't worry about me having a good time. I will have a good time just by observing your everyday life, and I just want to exist in your world. So I think that's a good way of approaching it.
Mr. Judd, as a global inclusion and TEDx speaker, corporate trainer, as well as filmmaker and educator, what are your short term and long term goals?
My goals, you said?
Yes,
Hmm.
please.
Um, um, I intend honestly to, after producing a film, having a TED talk, and then designing creating classes for universities. I believe, like now short term, it's very important for me to share those stories more on different platforms, on panels, on talks, on workshops, um, as a contributing author in books. These are short term things, being on shows or TV shows as a guest and speaking about these things. So, spreading the word is very important to me right now. In terms of long term, hopefully to create, maybe a series at some point. or a show around cross-cultural unity, like a reality show on how artists from different backgrounds come together to create art together from different cultures, and having a set of judges, including myself, judging the work. And like, is this work appropriate? Is this work impactful? Is it respecting the cultures? Right. So really, I really want to do a show where we bring, different artists from different backgrounds as they bridge their cultural elements together, and how do we mentor them to amplify those stories.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Jad, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
To have an open mind, to decenter yourself, to realize that the joy in the people you meet is very, very much important, more than yours sometimes. So be open to that, and have uncomfortable conversations, especially around colonialism, anti-blackness, Holocaust, genocides, wars, oppression, like those very tough conversations that we tend to avoid. Have them, have them, talk about them. They need to be talked about. And yeah, just be on your way, on the verge of becoming a global citizen.
Yes, indeed. And thank you for your advice, Mr. Jad. And can you please recommend a book that influenced your journey?
Yes, absolutely. So there's this book I've been recently reading. I'm like halfway through. It's called How the World Thinks by Julian Baggini. Baggini, I think, is how you pronounce his last name. And it's a philosophy kind of book. So it talks about the philosophies of different cultures around the world and how different cultures operate, specifically major traditions in India, China, Japan, Islamic focused communities, and African communities, and how these communities operate from a thinking and foundational principle thinking as opposed to Western thinking, right? So Julian talks about how we should like embody those traditional values, in comparison to how we grew up in the West and thinking how the West has the ideal value of standards. So I think How the World Thinks would be a great, good, easy read, for a lot of people. Please, read it, take a look at it. You don't have to also like read it like chronologically. You could read it in parts. It's very categorical. My favorite was definitely, like the African traditionalism and talking about Ubuntu, which I really appreciate and resonate with. So yeah,
Thank you for
thank you
that
for.
recommendation, Mr. Jad. And how does a population with a strong global citizenship traits fundamentally change how societies approach issues like climate change, migration, or pandemics?
Hmm, that's very interesting. I think when it comes to climate change, especially after traveling to the Caribbean islands,
Yes.
and living in the US, like I realized like how much like of a deep issue it can be today, and like how colonialism has a lot to do with it, right? There was this example, again, part of being immersive, in Guyana. The president of Guyana was calling out, I think, a politician who was interviewing him and telling him like, you don't get to educate me about climate change. We know how to preserve our climate, we know how to preserve our lands and everything. It was you British colonizers who came in and ruined it for us, right? Indigenous cultures know best about climate. They preserve the land and the earth so well. Colonization has, ruined the climate, and that's why we have climate change issues, because of all these things, right? When we travel, we learn about these things. Going to Caribbean islands, you see it like from the trees, the sea, the rain, everything, how people talk about it, how people treat the water. Like they're so in tune with their environment. And even when I growing up in Lebanon, like we're very much in tune with the trees and the fruits that we take and everything. We know our way around the land. You come to the US, everything is manufactured, even the fruits and the vegetables, and people are used to that and they think this is the way of living. It's not. The American diet is a whole lie. I mean, it's not good for you, to be honest. But when you travel outside of the world, you realize that we look at the environment and nature in a different way. So it's not just about learning the people, it's about learning the land, right? So it's very
Yes.
important to have that.
How can individuals maintain and nurture their global citizenship mindset and empathy in the face of nationalist or daily routines back home?
Well, I say be strategic about it because you also, in fascist societies, a lot of things don't have as much liberties. So be strategic about who you talk to, where you talk to. Be in community with people who understand your globalism. It's very important. Have conversations with people around you and connect with those friendships, and be strategic about who you choose as friends and who you do not. I think it's very, very important.
Definitely. And Mr. Jad, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. And Mr. Jad, if you could instill one essential skill or perspective related to global citizenship in every traveler before they depart, what would it be and why?
Mm, honestly, humor. Be funny. Enjoy, like laugh with the people that you meet. I think it's a great way. It's a great cross-cultural connective point. Embody humor everywhere you go. It's very necessary.
Yes. Laughter is the best medicine, people
Mhm.
everywhere in the world. And can you be my guest on Movie 101 review, and let's talk about the film or movie that you did, Mr. Jad?
Oh yes, Once Upon a Color on Prime Video, available on Prime Video. If you look up Once Upon a Color by Jad-Évangelo Nasser, it's available on Amazon Prime Video. It's a 13-minute short musical documentary. You can check it out. Yes.
Yes, people. Mr. Jad-Évangelo Nasser, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy or any projects that you're doing right now?
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. Please watch my TED Talk. Um, I think you'll enjoy it. Curiosity on YouTube and watch the film. And please reach out to me on jadevangelo.com if you want to collaborate, have more conversations. And, we run workshops on how to be a global citizen. I welcome that.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Jad-Évangelo Nasser, because if you support him, more and more and more empowering films to come, for sure. More and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Jad, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Have a good one.
More to come, people. See you soon.